When Andreas and I were having conversations a couple of weeks ago, I started thinking about what are some of the things. Well, I was talking about the compelling presentation, but then we started thinking about what are some of the things that could make the visit or the client interaction more compelling, like the presentations. And today I want to share with you three things which I think could help that. And I would be more than happy to verify this with all of you, since you have much more experience, especially on the customer side, than I am. But here is my 2 cents on the topic. I would like to talk about the profile that we have. And in that regard, a couple of things that Andreas shared with me. And then I would like to talk about the information that we give to the customer, and finally, of course, the presentation that we make. Just like the presentation, I believe that when we make the first contact, we immediately start creating the first impression, like the moment we walk into the office, or sometimes even before we walk into the office. And for that reason, I think we may take the time to actually invest in a professional profile photo, which will be taking place in all the communications or all the exposures that we make. Could be like the social media profile, could be our CV, could even be in our presentation, or any digital interaction that we make with the customer. I highly recommend that we invest in a professional photo shooting, which can help the final product with the lighting, with the quality, even with the story that the photo may convey. For that reason, I think it will be very beneficial to invest in a professional shooting, which will become part of our identity when we meet or when we interact with the client. Another part of the presence, not the presentation, but the presence that we make with the customer is, of course, the information that we share with them. Now, before coming here today, I questioned some people, including Andreas, and I love the number 3, by the way. Today, I'm going to share with you 3 topics regarding 3 things. And in this regard, I also have 3 questions that I find would be useful to ask, if not, we're already asking them. And of course, these are from the eyes of the customer, not from us, but from the customer when we start interacting with them and we start having the meeting with them. The first question is, of course, who are you? And in this regard, we can tell them things like about our past and why we think is what we did in our past is relevant in the way we can help them, we can serve them now. And that can include experiences, that can include past achievements, which are somehow connected to the things that we do now, which are somehow the things that actually bring me onto the stable, facing you to help you. The second question is, what do you do now? Now, how are those things that you did in the past serving you in a good way for the things that you're doing now? How are they related? How are they connected? And of course, probably the next question that we'll be asking is, how can you help me now? So this information is actually a means of proving to the client, proving to the customer that my past experiences combined with what I'm doing now is able to help you. This could be being able to help you what you want to achieve now, or helping you to get to where you want to get in the future. Now, with all these things, with the profile photo, with the information, with all the interaction that we have, I think two of the most crucial keywords that we may want to keep in mind are harmony and congruency throughout all the communications that we do with them, especially including the profile photo that I mentioned in the beginning. This would give the other person, the other people, an idea that the sensation that I'm bringing a whole package, which is carefully thought before I come to the stage or before I come in front of you. And I have done the work to bring all my information and all my assets, let's say, into a whole package which is harmonious and congruent within itself. And in congruency, I might also mention having a congruency between like my LinkedIn profile, my Instagram account, if I have one, if I use one regarding the professional services, my Facebook page, my website, basically all my interaction that the client may be seeing or maybe exposed to. And the idea is bringing all of them under one roof to make it coherent, congruent, and in a harmonious way. So the first one would be my, actually the third one, not the first one, sorry. The third one would be, of course, then when we come to the business presentation. Now, this, I think, where we have some of the biggest problems, not in terms of ourselves, but in all the presentations that we are exposed to. And very basically, this is the problem. We have a massive number of people who are extremely bored with the presentations that they're being exposed to. Now, we can talk for hours about why this is happening, but if I were to sum it up in one concept, that would be this: that we are creatures with visual perception. We pay super high importance, super high priority to images and visual things that we see. So much so that if I were to show you more than 2,000 photos and meet with you after 3 days to ask if one of these photos was in those 2,000 that I showed you, you would be able to answer me with a 90% accuracy. Now, this is great. However, when it comes to dealing with written or spoken words, we flunk. We flunk so bad that our retention goes all the way down to 10%. But here's the catch. Actually, here's the opportunity. If I am to accompany that message that I tried giving you in a written or a spoken way, which we do most of the time, with an image, then I am able to increase your retention by 6 times, by more than 6 times. So this is why, if I were to sum the whole problem, the whole reason of the problem, it would be visual perception, which is a very strong sense that we have. But unfortunately, this is still what we see. And when this happens, it is impossible for the other person to remember or to retain what we talk about. So for that reason, simplicity is the key word that I don't like using the word should or must, but I think in this case it's appropriate that we should be aiming for, to be as simple as possible so that the other person can understand us. Now, in the presentation, I talked about the anatomy of a compelling presentation. I'm not going to take too much time to discuss about that, but again, the number 3 is in session, and I would like to share with you 3 things to make the presentation better in a very short way. And with that, we come to the content, which is the first part of the 3. There are 3 cardinal questions to ask before we go on the presentation, not after. That's the key word. I'm actually taking these questions from the book, You Got 8 Seconds by Paul Hellman. I strongly recommend it. It's a short book. It's not a very long read, but in a place where we have decreasing levels of attention, I think some of the tips that he's sharing is super, super valuable. And the first question is, of course, like the previous one, why should I listen to this? Why am I listening to this? In this regard, it is my responsibility as a presenter, as a person who is speaking to them, to make sure that I find the answer to the question why. This could be in the shape of something that they could benefit, something that they could learn, something that could change their world ideally. But as a presenter, it is my responsibility to make sure that I answer to this question. This is why you should be listening to it. And the second question is, what exactly are you saying? Now, I've been there. I have done this mistake so many times in my life. Just because I research a topic and get familiar with it, I used to think that the other person will easily understand it. Unfortunately, it doesn't happen. So as the presenter, it is my responsibility to make sure that what I tell them is conveyed in the most simple, in the most succinct and understandable way. It is my responsibility to do that. So much so that if I were speaking to 15 people in a room, let's say, if I were to pull them after the meeting one by one and ask them, what did I talk to you about? I should I should be able to receive 15 identical answers from every single person. And for that, of course, I need to bring the complexity of my message to a minimum and make it easy to digest, easy to understand. And the third question that I should ask before walking up to the stage or speaking to anyone, of course, will be what they should do with this information. Actually, this is the question that they will be asking. What should I do with it? What do you want me to do? Do you want me to, I don't know, sign up for an email list? Or do you want me to follow up with you? Do you want me to give you a call? At the end of the presentation, again, just like the thing that I would ask them, what did I talk to you about? They should be able to say, okay, this is what you told me, and this is what I'm expected to do. If I fail to answer these questions, and I have so many times in the past, if I fail to answer these three questions before going on, before starting with the presentation, there is a big probability that the person will have remained physically in front of me in the room, the people, but there's a huge possibility that they will not remember what I tell them. And that's not something that I want, either in a business presentation or in any other presentation. If we are coming together for some reason, of course, we want to move forward. And for that reason, I need to make sure as a presenter that they remember what I tell them, and it's clear that this will be beneficial for both parties, and this is the path that we should be walking on. Now, that was the content. With that, I'm going to give you a very short amount of tips or tricks about the design part, which I think is important, which can create a huge difference in a very short amount of time. Again, the key word here is also simplicity, as the wise words of Leonardo da Vinci is the ultimate sophistication. And remember the boring people photos in the beginning. One of the reasons that happens is we use too much text on the presentations. And Andreas, you know what I'm talking about. So my number one recommendation would be minimizing the text. In this regard, feel free to take a crowded slide if you have, divide it into few slides or multiple slides. Do not worry about the slide number, and deliver it in a way that is easy to understand, accompanied by photos to increase the level of retention. And if you have to use text, which of course we have to, even after splitting the slides into multiple parts, I recommend that you use builds. Builds are super easy but super effective tools to give the presenter one huge advantage, which is you decide what comes on the slides when you're ready. So you talk about the first point, there is nothing else to focus on the slide, there is no other text. Only when you're done by speaking about the first item, you click, and then the second item comes in. And then when you're finished speaking about that, you click, and the third item comes in. Why I say it's the most easiest and the most effective, because you can take an existing presentation, I don't know, of 40 slides, let's say, in 1 hour or less, you should be able to incorporate builds into the presentation. It's very easy to do that, but at the same time, it's very effective because you can turn a crowded presentation into more manageable from the audience side and easily understandable fashion. And you don't have to do anything else. Just add the builds and do the presentation. Most of the time, we find ourselves using your charts, but the same rules apply here. We will need to simplify them. I will just give you 2 examples very quickly. when exposed with a chart like this, the audience can focus on anything. But if I'm talking, let's say, especially I'm talking about the third quarter, I can remove all the distractions and have the audience focus on the third quarter immediately. The rest of the data is still there. We can talk about it. But the idea is for them to be able to focus on my point as a speaker as soon as possible. Again, if I'm using a line chart like this, there can be a story there that while my sales are increasing, my profits are declining. Well, that would be an interesting story, actually. But again, I can remove every non-essential item from the slide and incorporate maybe the labels directly onto the lines for it to be understood very easily and very quickly. Just like the builds, one of the most effective tools which are underutilized in presentations is a slide sorter, which I highly recommend that you use. And it gives you an overall perspective on what's going on with your presentation. By using this tool, you're able to see how you start, how you're making your connections, how the flow of the presentation is going on. And it can give you an overall sense of whether there is congruency and harmony within your presentation, like the ones that I mentioned in the beginning. It's a very simple tool. It's under the view option in the PowerPoint, and it gives you suddenly and immediately a very general sense of what's going on in your presentation. I also recommend that you use this. Again, just like the content, especially in the design, there are so many tips and tricks and advice that I can share, but we're limited on time, so I'm not going to dig too deep into that. But there are only a couple of things that I want to share with you in the third pillar, which is the delivery.
Alper, you are already on 16 minutes. Just.
I'm finishing in 2 minutes, very quickly.
Perfect, thanks.
Okay, and in the delivery, again, 3 things, and I'm sure you've been accustomed to that by now. Those are the rehearsal of the presentation, the body language, the vocal tone. Okay, well, I confess there will be one last step. Now, with the rehearsal, there is only there are the 2 main reasons that I recommend with rehearsal is to avoid technological glitches that they happen and to be able to accommodate for any last-minute changes. These things happen. When you walk into the room, everything should be working perfectly, but they don't. If you have enough rehearsal, then you're able to weather the storm that is coming your way and actually maybe create a better impression by making the presentation without the presentation. So that was rehearsal. With the body language, like I mentioned, our first impression is made before we start speaking. So the way we present ourselves, the way we convey the message using our body language is important to make a good impression on the audience. And with the vocal tone, I'm just going to tell you that especially most of the business presentations that I have seen usually carry a monotonous tone, which puts the audience into sleep. And to prevent that, I think it's imperative that we use a varying vocal variety, a varying vocal tone, so that the audience doesn't fall asleep. As much important as the vocal tone is also the silence. If you find a way to incorporate that into the presentation, it's going to create a huge effect, and is, I think, one of the most powerful communication tools. And as I mentioned, there will be one more thing, and that will be this, using a presenter screen. It is the tool that we have in our disposal, but it is one of the strongest tools that we have, which are the least utilized. I don't know why, but it gives you a very clear idea of what's going on with your presentation at any moment, because you can see the slide that you're presenting, you can see that the slide that is coming up. You can even write yourself notes, as you can see on this part. And it gives you, at the bottom of the screen, an overall view of where you are during the presentation. So with that, the problem that I mentioned in the beginning becomes a little more manageable, and at least we have some ideas that we can utilize to make things easier. Like I said, this was a very quick version of a long workshop and a couple of trainings. So with that, I'm going to stop. I know that I've already passed my mark. I'm going to stop, and thank you for listening. Thank you.